It's a pleasure to rise and make my contribution on the budget response bills. Deputy Speaker, I want to get straight into the biggest issue in my electorate, and that is the closure of the timber industry by the end of this year and the devastating impact that that'll have on a large number of communities in my electorate. It's a decision that this government must reverse. Having had a quick Hansard search over the last 4 years, I've spoken around 20 times in support of the timber industry and lodged more than 60 questions on behalf of workers in the sector. Many of these have been the result of a lack of support for this sector. The reality is that this government's been making life very, very hard for this industry for quite some time, for its workers, for its families. Pretty much ever since this government came to office, it's declared war on the timber industry. And now it's made the decision that it wants to kill it, and regional Victorians are punished yet again by this government. But the worst part of this decision is that it was made on budget morning. There was no forewarning. There was no heads up to these timber workers, no heads up to these families. In fact, what they were led to believe pre-budget and pre-election was that this industry would be supported by this government until 2030. And then with a snap of the fingers, you're out of work in 6 months. The previous Speaker, the member for Northcote, just got up and spoke about the importance of mental health. How do you look after the importance of mental health with timber workers when you tell them they're going to be out of a job in 6 months? It is an absolute disgrace. It was a heartless ambush of these timber families and these timber communities. No forewarning, no detail, just a simple whack. Now, with a distinct lack of information or any detail that's even followed up in the days since, this has left timber workers and their families in disarray. They're very angry. It's not just my electorate of Gippsland East, the member for Gippsland South here, the member for Morwell, the member for Narracan. They are all going to be deeply impacted by this, the families in all of those electorates. But looking beyond the jobs just for a moment, looking beyond the impact on our timber communities, there's an issue here about responsibility. And there's a reality that the government and the Greens will not want to hear, and I want to put it down in 2 points. The first one is just on 95% of our current imported hardwood timber comes from countries with less oversights and less safeguards than our Victorian industry. 95% of our hardwood imports now come from countries with less oversight. The second point I want to make is that consumer demand for hardwood is going through the roof. It's going through the roof because it's the building product that's recommended by the International Panel for Climate Change. It's the building product that's recommended by Planet Ark, who are telling us to do the world some good, build it with wood, Acting Speaker. So consumers listen to that message, because those agencies that are telling us what we've got to do to combat climate change tell us to build with wood. So our consumers go out and they purchase their hardwood flooring, they purchase furniture made out of hardwood, they have their doors, they get their stairwells, they choose hardwood timber because the International Panel on Climate Change and Planet Ark tell them it's the right thing to do. So in relation to the International Panel on Climate Change, not only do they say use hardwood, but they actually specifically recommend to use plantation timber, and they recommend to sustainably harvest our forests. The International Panel on Climate Change says we should sustainably harvest our forests. No ifs, no buts. That's it. That's there. It's mentioned multiple times. So I pose this question to the government members. With community demand for hardwood increasing, because we're told to use it, 95% of our hardwood imports coming from countries that have less oversights, where are we going to get our hardwood from when we close our Victorian native hardwood timber industry? Where is the environmental responsibility on a global aspect that we are therefore doing the right thing? Where is the common sense? Because as consumers, we're going to keep buying these hardwood products because we're told to buy hardwood products. It's the right thing to do. It'll be sourced from countries with less oversight. So, in fact, what we've done here in Victoria is this government has made a decision that goes against the IPCC. It goes against all rational thinking about doing the right thing, and they are unable, despite a number of times that not only myself but fellow members in this chamber have asked this government, where is our hardwood going to come from? Where is our hardwood going to come from? Is it going to come from Malaysia? Is it going to come from Papua New Guinea? How is that a better outcome when they have less oversights in those countries? It's nonsensical. It is absolutely nonsensical. And we know it's not going to come from plantation, and I'll tell you why. Because the smoke and mirrors that this government put forward when it was negotiating with the timber industry was that we would transition to hardwood by 2030, hardwood plantation, by 2030. But when we asked the minister repeatedly, show us where these plantations are, because if we're going to transition by 2030, those plantations should be 15 to 20 years old now. And we know what the answer was. They couldn't tell us where they were. And the minister finally conceded that those plantations of hardwood did not exist. It was all smoke and mirrors. There was no intention to transition to hardwood because it simply wasn't there. But even so, and taking that into account, last week's announcement, the way it was done, was cruel and it was heartless. And how did the government try and sell it? Well, we had Ms Shing in the other place coming out and saying, we're doing this because we care about timber workers and we want to give you certainty. That was what she said. I mean, is she serious? Is she absolutely serious? First thing that Ms Shing could do if she cared about mental health of timber workers is not spring this on unsuspecting families with absolutely no notice. That would be the first thing you might like to try and do. Don't spring this on people and then say you care, like Ms Shing did. It's an oxymoron. It's a complete contradiction. I mean, if she is genuinely concerned about the welfare of these timber workers, I would hope that she'd organise meetings in each of the timber towns. Start at Orbost, Swifts Creek, Yarram, Hayfield, Morwell, even the mills in Bairnsdale. But I tell you what, she won't do it. She went down and made the announcement that the timber industry was closing with the minister behind the shelter at a TAFE college. She won't front up and talk to these communities that she is meant to represent in her own electorate. She'll just issue media statements, fluffy media statements, saying she cares when her actions don't back it up. It's a disgrace. Her actions from here on in will determine how much she cares about these families, and I can tell you at the moment they see through her spin and her claptrap. Their immediate future is very, very concerning, and these workers need answers. Now, the government some time ago, I think it was about 2 years ago, made funds available through the Forestry Transition Fund to employ project managers to manage the transition and the phase out of the timber industry. They were to look at the real opportunities. They were to look at the new industries we were to transition to, the new jobs, what was going to drive the economies in these communities when the timber industry left.
What are they?
Well, the time's now come to show us. I saw a lot of information about workshops, and I saw some information about forums. Well, now's the time to show us where these replacement industries and jobs are going to come from. No more fluff. Tell us how you're going to employ the more than 2,000 timber industry workers with real jobs. Let's not have a repeat of what we had with the Hazelwood closure. We got promised an electric vehicle factory down there. That was duck eggs. 500 jobs. That ended up in duck eggs. Then we were promised in Now when the mill closed, a nursery. And Harriet was down there again, patting herself on the back about how great she was about this nursery being open. All turned to dust. It's not happening. It's not happening. They pulled the pin on that. Now, I want to take Orbost as one example, Acting Speaker, of how a community is impacted. Now, these aren't our figures in the opposition. This is the Orbost Chamber of Commerce and Industry that did some work a few years ago. Orbost got 4,000 people. 4,000 people. and 40% of that town's employment was dependent on the timber industry. 40% in a community of 4,000 is dependent on the timber industry. And this government goes down and closes it when they've been promising we'll keep it going till 2030, closes it overnight. Overnight. We've had calls from timber workers saying, if my life insurance covered my mortgage and my wife and my family, I wouldn't be here because of the callousness of this government's action. It's an absolute disgrace. It's a decision that needs to be reversed. Speaker, we also have a mental health crisis in this state, and time again I come into this chamber and I hear government members talking about mental health, and it is a critical issue. Absolutely is a critical issue. Decisions like this, with no forewarning to those communities and those families, isn't the actions of a government that is seriously keen on addressing that issue. That is going to create so many more mental health problems right across that sector. And we talk about the mental health supports going in. People in Orbost are struggling to get mental health supports now in Swifts Creek, in Hayfield. They have to travel, they're remote, they're not in the towns. And we get this line out in a press release. Well, where are the people now in Orbost dealing with the mental health of those workers that they've just told that they're going by the wayside? It's not there. It's not there. And these people are facing this incredible level of stress and hardship, not knowing what their future holds. Been talking to contractors that have borrowed $2 million for machinery based on the commitment that their industry was going to be going till 2030 because you guys promised them it would. And then budget morning you tell them the rug's gone in 6 months with a pathetic package that's not going to get them out of financial stress and hardship. It's a disgrace. And you need to have a look at this, you need to revisit this, and you need to sort it out if you're serious about people's mental health and you're serious about rural communities.